welcome to the show. My name is Charlton with Big C. This is Charlton at Big C Sports, coming to you worldwide on the Big C Sports Network, on the number one network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the number one sports show in the universe, according to Big C. And them good old boys down south, I want to say bienvenidos to all of our listeners in Latin America, also across the pond in London, England, as well as Paris, France. Of course, you good old buds in Canada. We love you in Africa, the Big C tribe. But there's no one we love more than the good old boys down south, in the land of the free and the home of the brave, on a beautiful August the 25th, 2020. Rondo Deportes, bonjour, Big C. How's it going for you good old boys down south?
Well, Charlton, sitting around here getting a low in the weather and stuff. We had about 12 straight hours of rain and, just poured. So I think they went out to reload and come back again. But I want to thank our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders for being consistent and persistent in their efforts to save American lives every day, Charlton.
They are doing a fantastic job. I want to say today's show is sponsored by your Northern California Cadillac dealers, home of the all-new Cadillac Escalade, the standard of the world. And when you go by and test drive yours, just tell them Charlton and Big C sent you, as well as a fleet of Cadillac cars also all around the world. Just say Google or Alexa, play Big C Sports Podcast. You will hear from our sponsors. You will hear welcome to the show. I will introduce Big C as the Mystic, and he'll do his thing from 3,000 miles away. And I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. You can follow Big C Sports on Spotify. You can follow Big C Sports on Xfinity, Comcast TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, and a lot of smart TVs all over the universe. But you better have a smart TV or you'll be sitting there looking at a still picture. Man, I feel like when I do the Big C pause now, a puff of smoke comes out of my mouth, Big C, but I'll never stop pausing on the Veterans Crisis Hotline. They really are experienced helping veterans and their loved ones get help. Big C, why is that so important to you?
Well, Charlton, we hope that America never pauses on helping our great veterans of this country. We give out that National Suicide Prevention Hotline number throughout our shows, Charlton, but we need more of America to be attentive as far as what our veterans have done in serving this country.
Yeah.
We lose some 22 a day to suicide, a horrific number, Charlton. I know many people are focused on this pandemic called COVID-19, but our veterans have gotten us to this point in America and in the world in protecting the sovereignty of this great nation. Many of these veterans are destitute, Charlton, financially, emotionally, and socially. And we have to find ways as a society to keep these Americans afloat. We know that many of these Americans, Charlton, these veterans receive their medications and their checks through the mail, which the president is doing to obstruct up until the election. And so we got to think about our veterans in every capacity. These people struggle emotionally and mentally. Find ways to get them the National Suicide Prevention Hotline number. That conversation may be the conversation that saved their lives, Charlton.
It can save their lives. 800-273-8255. That's 800-273-8255, or you can text 838-255. That's 838-255. If you're online, simply go to veteranscrisisline.net. That's veteranscrisisline.net, and you can get some help. I once heard a judge say when his car has a ringing sound or making some grumblings that he's not used to, he's only good at putting in gas. Outside of that, he takes it to the mechanic. Let that Veterans Crisis Hotline be the mechanic. Also, very happy to be affiliated with Valley Homes Weekly TV on Dish TV, DirecTV, AT&T UVerse, TV 53, home of the San Francisco Giants, and the Say Hey Kid. Just reach out to them, tell them Big C sent you. The goal is simple. Recruit 10,000. Looking for 10,000 real estate and loan brokers all over this great country. It's amazing how things are growing to put their property listings on TV. And also, just like McDonald's does it, car dealerships do it, sports teams are doing it. Watch TV and real estate work for you. 800-772-8624. That's 800-772-8624. If you're looking for opportunities in real estate, go to bigcsports.pacwm.com. That's bigcsports.pacwm.com, and you can see opportunities there. I'm really, really happy about so many things that we're hearing just about some of the fires that are starting. I won't say the fires are going out. I think I read there's over 600 fires in California. the fires are so bad you can actually see the California smoke from Kansas, Big C. So I don't know how that's good news, but the air is not as bad as it was yesterday, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, air quality is always a concern in America with the burning of fossil fuels. But it seems this time of the year, every year, that California is going through this horrific fire season, and it's an unfortunate thing for its residents.
Yeah, it really is. So people, please heed the warnings, and everybody do the best you can to just figure out how to stay safe. I want to ask everyone, the Republican conventions tonight, we got a lot of sports to cover, sports and politics. Republican convention is tonight, Big C, and I know they started last night. I want to ask Americans to vote. Just text the word vote to 26797. Text the word vote 26797 and register. Tell all your friends and family. Tell them Big C and the NFL said vote. Let's make this the biggest vote in the universe. Really appreciate that. I want to get on something real quick because you're in SEC territory, Big C, and you know, former football player, you too. Herschel Walker's a former football player too. I know people think about sports, and sometimes all they think about is sports. But when I heard Herschel Walker, who looks like the guy that was shot in Wisconsin the other night, he also looks like the guy that was running for his life down in Georgia that was also shot in the back. And then Herschel Walker comes on TV last night, and he has a right to do whatever he wants to do. But I wish he would read that the biggest lawsuit brought by the Justice Department in New York City was against Donald Trump for not renting apartments to people who look like Herschel Walker. I wish he would read that. I know about the Central Park 5. Maybe Herschel doesn't know that either. But how can Herschel Walker stand up for a man who is part of the biggest voter registration that we've seen since Governor Wallace, and is also down in Georgia, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, you have to understand Herschel Walker's position with Donald Trump, Charlton, came long before Donald Trump got into politics. Donald Trump was actually Herschel Walker's first professional boss. He's the first guy to make Herschel Walker a millionaire. So that you got to look at that relationship between those two guys from a different aspect. He allowed him to get the start financially in life that he has now. So them understanding each other is a lot different from the layman person on the street, regardless of race and ethnicity, when you're looking at this. And Herschel spoke about that. They go back 37 years, not 7 years. And so, you know, could have been a different type of person at that time that Herschel Walker came in contact with, but people bond over the years. And it's just as you say when I say white people, you say not all white people. Herschel feels that way about Donald Trump.
Yeah, it's just obvious that he doesn't read, and that's embarrassing because I used to like him as a football player, but, you know, people have a right to be dumb and ignorant, and that's their choice. I want to touch on something that maybe Herschel Walker should also pay attention to, and he doesn't have to. But a president that says when you arrest them, rough them up, he was talking about guys that look like Herschel Walker are Herschel Walker's kids. So what happened in Detroit, Big C, NFL football, and I've always told you, and I know we disagree at times, I say athletes can really be at least part of that team that helps make change. The Detroit Lions, they canceled football practice today, protesting the shooting of another unarmed African-American male. And you know, Trump, I'll never forget this though, Herschel Walker might understand this. Trump told police officers, when you are arresting them, to rough them up. That means if they grab Herschel Walker's kids, it's the same matter. What do you think about Detroit Lions canceling football? Green Bay hasn't done it yet, but that's a big move, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this is a unilateral story across the professional sports spectrum. When you think about what the Detroit Lions did after a team meeting this morning, canceling practice, deciding, you know, they need to make a stance. And when you look at the Detroit area, Charlton, of the downtroddenness of that area after the auto industry collapsed in Detroit, the Motor City, Charlton, you know, there's been a lot of disparaging going on in that city. And so when the Lions recognize socially what's going on, and this is what, like I said, 4 years ago, Colin Kaepernick told everybody this was going to occur.
Yeah.
And everybody ostracized Colin Kaepernick. No one wanted to stand in unity with him. Think about if all the professional leagues had stood along with Colin Kaepernick or took a knee with Colin Kaepernick 4 years ago, where we would be now against the fight against social and racial injustice in America.
Yeah.
If we could see the effects in 2020, why could we not see them in 2016? Because they were just like in 2016, just like they were in 1968.
Yeah.
But people want to say, well, you know, it doesn't affect me. Yes, it does affect you. when you are a black man in America, you're at risk of losing your life every time you leave home, because you walk around and you get in a car that somebody sees that they don't like to see you in, because they figure you're doing better than what they're doing, or you got to be doing something illegal. They have the chance to take your life at their will, and then they say, well, he attacked me and my life was in fear.
Yeah.
This is what police officers say all the time. And I guarantee you that's what they said in Kosher, Wisconsin, when they shot Mr. Jacobs, who is now going to be paralyzed the rest of his life, 7 times point-blank range in his back.
Yeah.
Show us where the threat was, because the video does not show the threat.
Yeah, so I'm sure Herschel Walker says that's okay. You know, your man said rough them up, so maybe Herschel can give Donald a pat on the back that they are listening.
But we can't take that one incident with Donald Trump saying rough him up a couple years ago when he was speaking to the law enforcement in New York at the Academy. How long has black people been roughed up by white police officers in America, Chelsea? We've seen it for years, just on basic, peacefully marching, being beat by batons, hit with water hoses, Chelsea, attacked by vicious dogs, even shot and killed. We have seen this for decades in America. Donald Trump is not the reason for this happening. He's just stimulating the crowd going back to what they used to be. But let me know at what point, because ever since you've been watching TV as a child and even into your adulthood, let me know what point in life that you have not seen video reels of blacks being beat by white police officers throughout America's history.
Well, it's happened too much. It's just a shame that someone who's considered a great athlete, not that athletes are any more important than anybody else, but 3 Lions.
But you got to realize Herschel Walker taped that speech before Mr. Jacobs was shot in Wisconsin. That was a taped scenario that Herschel Walker had on television.
Well,
I'm not discounting his relationship with Donald Trump, because one person is not moving the pendulum. You're talking about a member who is a part of society. Yes, he's a former athlete. He's just a part of society. He's a businessman, owns the largest African-American trucking business in America. Herschel Walker does. So he employs a lot of blacks. He does good for blacks, regardless of his relationship with Donald Trump.
Well, everybody has their own opinion. I give you money, so that's okay to shoot your kids. 3 Lions, they said football's not that important. Duron Harmon, defensive end. The safety is a Duron Harmon. There's a defensive end, Trey Flowers, and offensive tackle Taylor Decker, and several other of the players. They really said that they feel this on a personal level, and they want to do what they can to make a difference. I don't know if you've heard anything from the Green Bay Packers yet, but I really appreciate when men don't shut up and dribble, because we got to find a way to make things better. I do want to ask you something also, and it's just my opinion. I'm very opinionated. Some people say too opinionated, and that's okay. You can't please everybody. But we have a lot of pro athletes, like a LeBron James, Alvin Kamara. They speak up about demanding justice from the Justice Department and from black law professionals. I think there's over 33,000 black lawyers in the United States of America. They have to be a part of the solution, not just athletes. Athletes can get it started, but you can't change law unless you're into the Justice Department, Big C, and that's what we need lawyers for. But I'm proud of LeBron James again. LeBron James hires people too, Big C. Everybody has their own part. Not the same skin color doesn't mean the same ideology. But give me your thoughts on LeBron James, Alvin Kamara, other athletes saying we got to do something. They just need help from lawyers, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, you need help from lawmakers. I mean, any lawyer can go to court and sue anybody, file suits. Filing suits don't change laws. You have to get in front of the Supreme Court to affect the law. Laws on the civil level take a long time to work through the judicial system, and they're normally not even heard in the Supreme Court. It comes down to our lawmakers, the people that you elect to protect and serve you, who come out and stomp in your neighborhoods and in your districts saying that they're going to protect you. Because every senator in America has more power than any lawyer in America. And that senator can shout it down, because it has to get past senators to become bills and laws in America.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to be. We can go out in court, and you spend every 4 years going to court. But you can spend every 4 years going to the poll to elect these officials, to put people in place that will affect and change your lives and make it better, instead of sitting around saying my vote doesn't matter.
Yeah, there's too much of people saying my vote doesn't matter, and I don't want to hear those guys, but they have a right to their opinion. tonight's convention, they have Melania Trump, who supported Donald Trump in the birtherism on President Barack Obama. She said nothing. She was just quiet. And then she also supported Donald Trump in his attempt to start birtherism again against Kamala Harris, saying nothing, quiet. But if people want to read more about Melania Trump, they can realize she's speaking tonight at the National Convention. She's going to be in the Rose Garden for some reason at the White House. And again, with the birtherism, they just Google Melania Trump. She posed nude in magazines, and she's going to be preaching to suburban women about values with your children and how suburban women can also pose nude in magazines and become the first lady of the White House. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, in looking at bits and pieces of the Republican convention that I looked at last night, and I was awed that Fox News didn't cover it all. They'd rather have their excerpts and commentary going on. But in listening to the speakers, I didn't know whether I was watching the movie Lion King or the television show Anger Management.
Both of them.
I couldn't tell the difference.
Yeah, it's both. It's both, Big Z. But it's all fair in love and war. I just encourage people to get out and vote and don't feel apathetic. I just want to. I've always felt, as far as I can recall growing up, when I saw things and dealing with politics, I was a little boy when I would hear my elders talking about politics, and right after the time Dr. King was stomping and made a lot of speeches, I was made conscious of that because Dr. King lost his life fighting for liberty and justice for everybody. And so I've been turned on to voting in politics for a long time. I still want to say, America, please register to vote. Text the word vote to 26797. That's vote 26797. Tell all your friends that Big C in the NFL said vote, and let's make this the biggest vote in the history of the universe. I want to ask you, and again, I know you might disagree with me, and that's okay. I like my Kool-Aid cold. You like yours hot, Big C. Why do you drink a hot Kool-Aid, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, that way you keep your refrigeration bill down, so you're not wasting a lot of ice.
Well, they need some ice on the Republican National Convention, but I want to go to the NBA. Here we are again, seeing African-American men being the vanguard of trying to create social change. We just need to hold hands with lawyers. We got to get lawyers involved and lobbyists involved of all colors, black and white, Big C. NBA, the Toronto Raptors, they hold a team meeting before practice today, and they're discussing whether or not to play or boycott Thursday's opening second-round game against the Boston Celtics after Jacob Blake's shooting in Wisconsin by police. He was shot in the back. In the back. 7 times in front of his kids. That just does not happen to white people. It just doesn't. And I know he said rough them up and some of them listen. But give me your thoughts on whether players should, I guess, abort the game, not do the game. What difference does that make, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, what has everybody been hollering for? The politicians and all. You got to get sports back. Networks have been hollering. You got to get the sports back. But isn't it ironic that a team from Canada is the team that speaks up and says, let's not do this? When you think about how Canada has handled racial discrimination,
wow, good point,
and how it is a melting pot, especially Toronto, 2/3 of the population of Toronto is based on immigrants.
Yeah.
And here it is, they're down here in America, and they're witnessing the atrocity of people, Charlton, in 2020. You got to realize part of the Underground Railroad during slavery led straight to Canada, Charlton. People went to Canada because they were not looked at as slaves. They were looked at as people.
Yeah.
And here in this country, we still devalue black lives in America when it comes to laws. You talk about court all the time.
Yeah.
The court is what devalues black lives, Charlton, because those judges that they stand in front of that allows that black life to be worthless is the reason why. You can have an attorney there arguing why that black lives matter, and the judge can overrule anything that was said, and he cannot allow certain testimony.
Yeah.
So as we look at having lawyers, they still have to deal with the court system, Charlton,
yeah,
which is the almighty powerful. And they're the ones who are not sentencing these cops and saying that they have prosecutor immunity, Charlton.
Yeah, even POTUS just pardoned a bank robber today, and one of his white friends that robbed a bank. He said he doesn't see anything wrong with robbing banks. He's been robbing banks for a long time. It ironically, too, for Herschel Walker, sports and politics, they mix so much, Big C. I mean, they really do. Joe Biden condemns systemic racism people have their issues about, did he say the right thing? Did he do it or did he not? Did he apologize? Did he not? Nobody's perfect. But Donald Trump has said nothing but roughed them up. And he may come out and say something subsequently to say, well, let's give some time for people to forget that what they saw on videotape wasn't real. Let's hopefully get a whole white jury and figure out if they're going to acquit this guy like in the Rodney King, but so many other situations. Isn't it? I want to ask you, and you don't know, but you're down there with all those Southern guys that you hang out with. What do they say when POTUS says nothing? And if he says anything, why does the President of the United States have to wait 2 days before he even says anything about my thoughts and prayers with the family? Or we're going to do a full investigation? Nothing, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, where I live are Republican-led states here in the South. And you got to understand the president is not going to speak up consistently against police misbehavior in this country because he advocates for it, Charlton. He has said that it is okay. You constantly say, he keeps saying rough them up. So why would he tell the guys what he's doing is wrong when he told them that's what he expects from them?
Yeah.
So when you think about the areas of the country that you're in and the people who speak out against it, you got to look at how the South looked at Colin Kaepernick, saying that he was against the Bible and he was against the military, and he was against the flag. Look at what happened to Bubba Wallace, the NASCAR race driver. He's getting death threats now because they can't wear, rebel paraphernalia to the racetracks or show it or hang it around. So this is how black people are treated in the southern part of the United States. I know it's a lot more liberal out in California. You have to spend some time here amongst the people to really understand how they think and how America has always stunk, Charlton, for 400 years.
Yeah, it's amazing when we look at it, how he goes ahead and pardons a bank robber before his RNC convention, and he's trying to say that Black Lives Matter because people of all colors. I know he's pardoned a couple of people that happen to be people of color. People say, see, those lawsuit discriminations against Black Americans, that doesn't matter. He can't be racist, Herschel Walker. Man, it's a joke. But I do know that everybody has their own thoughts about things. I do want to ask you, when we think about, I know people say athletes can't do everything. But I want to ask some of my white brethren that I love watching them play golf. The PGA, imagine this, because we've had NFL football say we're not going to have practice. NBA is talking about not playing at least the first game. And baseball don't know what they're going to do yet. Not that they have to do anything. But just imagine in a world, the Trump world, the MAGA country, where if PGA golfers, top white golfers, with household names, had white kids being shot in the back by law enforcement, had they seen that whether it's a family member or a friend or just the average Joe, would they be told to shut up and swing? If we had guys like Jordan Spieth, Phil Mickelson, if we had those kind of players, Koepka, if they had those players seen this happen to white men, Ricky Fowler, he's a person of color, Brooks Koepka, Jordan Spieth, Phil Mickelson is a big name, but everybody put more pressure on Tiger Woods having extramarital affairs that most of these guys have than on a black man being shot. Why are they so silent over that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, you have to look at it. Why is America so silent over it? If these were black officers shooting white men in the back, shooting white men that were unarmed, there would be a different outcry in America, Charlton, but it doesn't affect them because the guys who are pulling the triggers look like them. So they know that there's a 99.9% chance that they are safe regardless of where they go and what they do. Because the guy is not going to take the same perspective of a white person in society, Charlton, as he is going to take of a black person. Every time that you hear of a black person being killed or shot by police officers, they were in fear of their life. They thought they had a gun. They thought they had a knife. Even on the tape, you heard the police officers in Kosh, Wisconsin saying, drop the knife. But you could see the man's hands. He's pulling up his pants, and he continued walking around the car. He had no knife in his hand. But we've always heard the excuse from the white police officer that has shot a black person. He was in fear of his life. He thought he had a gun. I mean, even when you witnessed the Rodney King beating for 9 minutes back in 1992, everybody said Rodney King had to be doing something wrong. Otherwise, the police wouldn't have beat him for 9 minutes laying in the street. George Floyd is not for the video. The only thing that would have mattered would have been the police testimony on why they killed him on the side of the street. it would not have mattered to society, Charlton. Many other black men have died in America over the decades because the police were the only ones that could give testimony because they killed them. And this is the same thing. Nothing has changed. I mean, we can call on any athlete we want in America. But until they wholeheartedly shut it down and say, we're not going to play any longer until we get social injustice and racial reform in America, it's going to continue. As much as we preach about it, anybody else preach about it, this is the status quo, the modus operandi of this country. Just like when you always talk about the conscience, we the people are the ones that are scared. White people don't worry about it.
Well, I want to, not that you know, but what would you expect to hear from the current First Lady of the United States when I juxtapose her being naked in magazines and her husband being a racist and a sexist, and then American white women voted by 52% and white men voted, I think, by 65% for a woman to become the First Lady, and anyone in the world can Google her naked in a magazine showing everything that came with her out of the womb. And they voted for that. So what do you expect to hear from her, this birtherism supporter, and Melania Trump? What do you think she's going to hear from her? Anything about making the country come together? Big C, your thoughts?
Charlton, what can you expect to hear from an ex-stripper on a podium, okay? She might use the microphone as a pole. But here's a person talking about Dee Best. She lives with one of the most harsh, rude people in the history of the world that's running the Oval Office.
Yeah.
If she wants to talk about Dee Best, she launched that campaign a few years ago when she plagiarized what Michelle Obama had written.
Yeah.
And she's done no follow-up with it, Charlton. Dee Best, the best thing she does is be quiet and listen.
Yeah, well, they're going to put her out there. I think Gulliford was the one that had the COVID-19, but the man that gave it to her, Donald Trump's son, they said he had nothing. They sleep together. How could he not have it if she has it? It's all fair, love, and war. I just want to say I'm so proud. I'm going to say some names because people sometimes they don't say names. But I heard a thing. I was watching TNT the other night, and Kenny the Jet Smith, when he was in Northern California, we were around the same area, if that makes sense. Same color cars. And when he said something about Charles Barkley, I've always been proud of black men who were not afraid. Because there's a mentality that, well, we can't say anything because, we may lose our job or whatever. Go tell that white man what's important to you. When Charles Barkley said to Kenny the Jet Smith, and Shaq was there, and Ernie was there, he talked to Dick Ebersol, I believe, and he was going to go to different networks. Now, you don't hear this from many people. Charles Barkley said, I want to be able to say what's important to me, not just to be an athlete. And they told him, okay, why don't more people do that, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, just like what you said in your opening there, athletes lose their job for being politically involved. This is the reason why you don't hear it on the major networks in America. You sign a contract. We saw where Earl Thomas got released from the Baltimore Ravens. They used the conduct clause in his contract.
Yeah.
All these broadcasters sign the same thing, conduct, detrimental, and they tell you things that you will not touch on in the program. You won't touch on politics. That's the number one thing you don't get involved in a sports program. This is the reason why they always bring an outside voice into a broadcast to talk about it, because they know that their jobs are on the line if they're the ones that cross that line too far.
Yeah.
They can write what's on the teleprompter, but they have to leave the open, explanation to that guest that they brought on the program.
Yeah, I saw Angela Rye on TV this morning. She's fabulous, very intelligent, very well-spoken. Before we get up on the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout, I just encourage people to don't just be a dumb jock. We've never been that, and don't let people make you that. We want to be sexy. We want to be clever. We want to be engaging. We want to be bold. We want to be thrilling. We want to be funny. We want to be thoughtful. We really want to be accurate. If you're doing something and it feels good and you want some more, just Google it. I really appreciate what we're doing with Big C Sports. When I come back, I want to talk to you more about some of the things that are happening in sports and politics. We'll be back in just a moment. All right, we are back after the Big C Pause, also known as the Big C Timeout. You can follow Big C Sports 24 hours a day, 7 days a week on the #1 podcast network in the universe, iHeartRadio Podcast. You can follow Big C Sports on Apple Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on Google Podcasts. You can follow Big C Sports on so many other platforms, and I really appreciate the way things are growing with Big C Sports. Big C, I want to ask you something, because I know we're going to touch more on some basketball, some big games coming up tonight, but I want to go down to the world of college football. College Football Playoff Selection Committee, it held a meeting yesterday, and they said that there will still be a playoff without Big Ten or Pac-12 schools being involved this season. And I say, so what, Big C? But your thoughts on that, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, I don't even know if there's going to be a college football talk. If you look at the rapid rise of COVID-19 on many of these campuses have sent their student bodies home for at least a couple of weeks while they say they sanitize the campuses.
Yeah.
We have no assurance right now that college football is 2 weeks away or even a month away from starting. I know the SEC is talking about starting the last Saturday.
They're crazy.
In September, so they're giving themselves another 5 weeks before they have to face this pandemic, Charlton. But, you know, when we look at the rapid rise on these campuses and what this playoff committee is talking about, realistically, I think the Pac-12 has only been involved in this thing one time, Charlton.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Washington got in and Oregon got in, and Oregon ended up losing to Ohio State. Washington lost to Alabama. But I told the guys on the West Coast, when you play some of those southern and northern schools, you got to bring your own Gatorade. Don't get the Gatorade they gave them made them sleepy. That doesn't make any sense, but I think they learned their lesson. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. You talk about teams and conferences that may play sports, Big C. Nick Saban says he really loves those kids. In fact, he loves them so much. Nick Saban is going to volunteer to take all of his contract money, all of his salary from this year, and he's going to donate it to COVID-19 research because he really wants to show his kids, his football players, he's going to put his money where his mouth is. Tuscaloosa, Alabama. University of Alabama, they confirmed that since classes started on August 19th, if my math is right, that's 6 days ago, they've had 531 confirmed cases of COVID-19 on campus. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you know, we talked about for the past couple of weeks how hotbed that the state of Alabama was as far as COVID-19. We saw a school district that was shut down, Charlton, because of COVID-19, that the teams weren't allowed to play. They were put on pause. We saw where the University of Auburn, I believe, had 33, 34 players that test positive for COVID-19. We had also weeks earlier than that where the University of Alabama had a breakout. Now, I've heard these coaches and even Nick Saban talk about the players are safer on campus than what they would be at home. But, you know, with 531 confirmed cases in a week, I'm kind of thinking that you may not have that many cases if you were at home.
Yeah, I mean, and they haven't played football as far as I know, 531 cases, but that's Alabama, and the White House did say the numbers are going down, even though they counted 531 positive cases at one university in less than a week. It's all fair in love and war. Big C, I know we touched on it, but I want to dip back into it just a little bit, because NCAA is where a lot of things, it would have to, I mean, we just got to look at the science, it seems. The University of Georgia, I think that's where Herschel Walker went to school. And he may be in denial about it, but 561 students test positive for COVID-19 since returning to school a week ago. That's Georgia. And they've also had similar results at Alabama. So why does the White House say the numbers are declining when the schools are saying, wait a minute, they're not declining? Big C, your thoughts?
Well, when you think about those two SEC universities, Charlton, and they're probably about 3 hours apart from each other by drive time. So I don't even think they fly to each one of those games, Charlton, when they play each other. But you got these two major SEC universities that are 3 hour drive time away from each other, and they've had 1,000 students that have tested positive in 1 week between just these two campuses.
Wow.
We talked yesterday about Vanderbilt University in Tennessee pausing practice because they've had several players test positive, so they haven't reported the number of students on campus that have tested positive. But we're talking about three major SEC institutions that have sent the students off campus for at least 2 weeks because of the COVID-19 breakout. So when people want to walk around talking about you got to get sports played again and the kids will recover quicker than adults, the last I checked, these student athletes, Charlton, and the students are considered adults.
Yeah.
When you think about it, they're adults because They're hanging out in bars and doing all these other frat parties and all these other things, Charlton.
Yeah.
So as we look at what's going on these campuses, and all the medical experts have said this is a bad place to bring students back on campus. But all these other politicians are saying we got to get the games played again because of the economic loss.
Yeah.
What is it going? How many loss of life is it going to take of students and student athletes for people to say we got it wrong?
They'll tell you when the White House says how many Mexicans they brought up and they detained them, those children, and no one even knows where their kids are. And that man has his wife be best. Is Melania Trump going to talk about those kids that her husband said round them up, the brown-skinned people, and put them in cages? And is she going to talk about where those kids are? There was a commercial when I was growing up on the news. At about 11 o'clock p.m., it would always say, "Do you know where your children are?" I wonder if Melania Trump, who's also a mother, is going to speak to the women, those housewives, those suburban housewives that POTUS loves talking about, and if she's going to say anything to them about kids that have been detained by her husband, Big C. College football, there are 23 Associated Press preseason All-Americans. They will not be playing football this season, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, this goes with the Associated Press. You're naming people after you've heard that college football is canceled. You got 9 teams that you have in your top 25 that are not participating in games this year. Not only that, you got 23 kids that you say are the elitists in the country, and they're not playing. So what are you going to do about the players if the season goes on in any capacity that play at an All-American level, Charlton? Do those players still retain their All-American status and you add new ones into the system?
Well, I'm sure they'll figure it out. If you have the talent, they'll make exceptions for you. Like POTUS, like American women, the suburban housewives. I'm sure you were going to tell all your daughters and your grandchildren, especially the little girls, to go spread naked in a magazine so you can become the first lady of the United States someday. Most parents tell their kids go to law school or at least run for politics. And I'm not knocking any woman that spreads herself naked in a magazine, but is that what suburban housewives really want? That's what they voted for. Because when they voted for him, they voted for her too. But maybe I'm the one missing out. I read a book called Melbourne. It's about written by Lord David Cecil. It's about the Whig society in England, how they party hard and play hard. So maybe I'm the one missing out. But I want to mention also the world's fastest man could not outrun COVID-19. Usain Bolt tested positive also, Big C, for COVID-19 after having a lavish birthday party like the one that Donald Trump likes to have. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, this proves the scene of social distancing, Charlton. Many nights on newsreels, we see where they're having these huge parties and gatherings and people are not wearing face guards, Charlton. This is just another one. Regardless of who you are in society and where your status may be, you're still susceptible to COVID-19. Usain Bolt, has won as many world titles as a sprinter as anybody in history, Charlton, but he could not run COVID-19.
Yeah, he's fast like lightning, Big C. The man has done his thing, but sometimes people don't read, and it's all fair and love and war. Again, I want to just commend the First Lady Melania Trump on Be Best. Just Google her name, and you can see a lot about how Donald Trump found her in a magazine, and that's the First Lady that some of you suburban housewives wanted to put back in office again. It's all fair and love and war. There's a lot of things happening in the world of NBA basketball. I really love the uniforms that the Lakers had last night to honor Kobe Bryant. They were black with some gold trim, and it looked like the clothing or the material was kind of like snake skin. I had some rattlesnake boots, Big C. I bought them back in the day. I still got them. And that's what it looked like. But the Lakers came out and really put a beat down on Portland last night. Damian Lillard has some knee issues, not going to be able to play in the next game. But just give me this thought on the Lakers. They seem to have found a second stride, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, LeBron James has never lost in the first round of a playoff series ever since he's been in the NBA. But there was a point of the game, Charlton, that was surreal in the first quarter, where the score was 24-8, the Lakers over the Trailblazers.
Isn't that something?
Which were both of the numbers that Kobe Bryant wore.
Yeah.
And the Lakers are going to breeze through this. When you look at the Trailblazers, they're beat up, they're hamstrung, Charlton. So this is one that the Lakers will finish out in their next game.
Yeah, it was a nice celebration, and I'm not surprised, but I love the fact that so many players come together, and they do what it takes to just show solidarity. And I really appreciate that. that's so important to me. There's something about the brotherhood in NBA players that even the white players, they will lock hand in hand with the black players for social equality. I know baseball does it too, and the NFL does it, and the NASCAR did it. Mostly white men did that. And I know for the most part, your friend Jim Nantz, when Colin Kaepernick had other players taking a knee, and he was doing a football broadcast on CBS, and he thought the microphone was off, but he said, "I'm so tired of this blip." And when the microphone came on, then of course he's saying, well, the players are obviously, making a stand. But what is it about golfers really? Before I cover some more NBA, will golfers ever get to that point where they'll say, I know it's not happening to white guys like the white golfers or the country clubs that they sit in, but will we ever see attention from the white golfers? They have more access to those white news outlets than those black athletes. Big C, your thoughts?
Golf is a white sport, Charlton, that does not have that bottom line of a color barrier. Tiger Woods, Charlton, is the lone wolf when it comes to golf. I mean, when he's playing well, people want to watch him. But other than that, white golf is an exclusive club, Charlton. Black people generally can't get on a lot of the courses where these games are played. I mean, you think about Augusta. They have no black members at Augusta, where the Nationals played every year. I'm going to assume probably Riviera and a couple other clubs don't have any black members also, Charlton. So when you think about the exclusivity of these clubs, why should they worry about going outside their comfort realm to defend somebody that they really have no association with? You don't even see black caddies on the PGA Tour.
Yeah, and that's the point. Why not? They had this thing where they had in a couple of golf tournaments where they had some black golfers that faced discrimination on the golf course too, and they had about a 30-second infomercial for all these historic black golfers. I would love to see the golf world step up, but I mean, they won't even let courses be integrated for the most part, so maybe I'm looking at fool's gold. Tonight, basketball, NBA style, down in the bubble. The Jazz and the Nuggets, I don't like to give out scores because people record things and they go watch them, but when I look at Donovan Mitchell, Big C, I love the way he's playing. I know you said he'd be one of the guys you would like to have the ball in his hand with down by one with 5 seconds left, and I think he's a good choice. There's so many solid players. But the game I want to look at tonight is the Mavericks and the Clippers. I do believe the Clippers will win this series. It seemed like Dallas needed a miracle to pull out a Game 4 win to go 2-2. But after a big emotional win like that, sometimes you have a letdown. And if Kawhi Leonard remembers that he should be the guy guarding the toughest guy on the court, that's one thing. But his friend, his right-hand man, Paul George, if you can't shoot jump shots, just go to the basket. Big C, your thoughts?
Well, you call it a miracle to win the game. I call it that they outscored the Clippers to win the game.
Yeah.
I don't think that's a miracle when you outscore your opponent. I think that you outplayed them. You got to realize Dallas is also without their second-best player in Porzingis.
Yeah.
And here it is, you beat the alleged first or second-best team in the West without your second-best player. You got to look at the Clippers really from this loss. They got to be more worried about Dallas than Dallas is about the Clippers. And you think about it, the Clippers technically have the home court advantage even though you're playing in the same arena. They were the underdogs going into this series.
Yeah. Let me ask you again. I know you have your own thoughts about it, so do I. If the Game 5 tonight, let's say we're tied at 100 and there's 5 seconds left, and if you are Dallas, because Luka also has some air balls that were three-point baskets. I mean, I think Curry's a better three-point shooter than Luka, but he just had that miracle shot that helped them win because he was guarded by a smaller guy. Would you go right back? But let me not ask you a question. Who would you go to this time, Dallas? Say they're down by 5 seconds left to get the game-winning shot. Your thoughts?
I mean, nothing has changed with Dallas. When you look at the first month of the NBA season, Luka Doncic was averaging a triple-double. He was the leading triple-double scorer the first month of the NBA season. You look at what he's done in the bubble. He's right back on track to where he started the season, averaging a triple-double in every game, Charlton. I mean, he's had some leg injuries that has slowed him down, but you got to look at it from this aspect.
Yeah.
Has the Los Angeles Clippers showed anybody that could stop him? He's averaging a triple-double. Who's playing defense?
Yeah, I would still love to have the claw on him, but that's what I would like. If I'm the Clippers, and I'm coming down to a last-second shot. Kawhi Leonard also had a chance to do what Luka did, and he pulled up for a shot that was too far out. I thought he should have driven the basket. I think teams that drive the basket have a better chance. I can't wait to see the game. It is being recorded on the DVD for me, Big C. And for the point spread, it's amazing how they have a 6.5 point spread in the bubble, but we know it's all fair, love, and war. The team that's going to win this is going to be the team that makes the more baskets, no matter what their favorite is. I want to ask you something, because we're seeing some incredible basketball. It's just my opinion, I want to get Big C's thoughts on some 50-point game performances, and it's still counting in NBA history. I know when we talk about Wilt Chamberlain, how he scored 100 points, and people can't seem to remember it. But when you think about the most 50-point games, Wilt Chamberlain's done it 118 times. Jordan did it 31 times. Kobe Bryant did it 25 times. If we had a game coming down to 5 seconds left, down by 1, you had a chance to give Wilt, Jordan, or Bryant the ball to win it, who would you go with, Big C? Your thoughts?
I'm going with Wilt. You know, you talk about the most 50-point games scored in an NBA career.
Yeah.
You got to understand, twice in his career, Wilt Chamberlain averaged over 50 points a game for a season. One season he averaged 54 points a game. Another season he averaged 52 points a game.
Wow.
So when you talk about a guy being dominant, I mean, everybody nowadays gets stuck on what they saw on television. You always talk about reading.
Yeah.
You have to understand the history of a sport that makes a player great. Just because you see guys on highlight reels now because they got ESPN talking, don't make them the greatest basketball players of all time. People don't even talk about Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, who had the unstoppable shot.
Yeah.
He may not have averaged 50 points a game like Wilt did because he didn't need to dominate the ball so much. But if it came down to the last 5 seconds, and you're talking about any athlete, the prime of his career, I'm going to take Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Really?
Because he's going to get his shot off, and nobody can stop him.
Well, James Harden going into this series, into the bubble, I think everyone would say that James Harden is the guy you want down by 1, 5 seconds left. You want the ball in his hands to win it. James Harden's had 23 50-point games. Elgin Baylor, 17. Rick Barry, 14. LeBron James has only had 12 50-point games, which shows me, Big C, and he's considered the GOAT for half the people that vote. Some people say Jordan, others say Kareem, etc. But he only has 12 50-point games because he gets a lot of his performance in winning by having assists given out to Big C. And Jabbar has 10 50-point games, Big C. Your thoughts?
But who's the NBA's all-time leading scorer?
Yeah, that'd be your friend Kareem Abdul-Jabbar.
Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So when it comes down to the game being on the line, I want the league's all-time leading scorer, not the guys who take the most shots.
Yeah.
I want the guy who scores the most efficiently.
Yeah.
Kareem is left out of the conversation because at the end of his career was the beginning of the ESPN and all the sports show programs.
Yeah.
LeBron was born into it like the kids today are born with cell phones in their hands.
Yeah.
But when you go back and you understand the game of basketball and the difference that players can make, the clutch shooting. I mean, you even talk about Rick Barry. Rick Barry was much better than Larry Bird ever was. He just played his career before there was ESPN. But when you look at Rick Barry as a pure scorer, whether it was at the University of Miami, whether it was in the ABA or the NBA, Rick Barry is one of the purest shooters to ever play in the game. Don't even throw Jerry West and Elgin Baylor into the conversation.
Yeah.
Because the players that you talk about and notarize, Charlton, are the players that play in the highlight generation. The guys who played in the basketball generation, remember, they didn't have three-point shots.
Yeah.
I remember when the Los Angeles Lakers were playing the New York Knicks in the 69 NBA championship. Jerry West took a shot from around half court to tie up the game.
Yeah.
That took it to a game 7. Okay? And that game went into overtime, game 6.
Yeah.
And so if that had been a three-point shot in that time, the Lakers would have just won the game outright instead of tying up the game.
Yeah.
So when you don't have three-point shots in the equation with all these people, and don't forget about the mailman Karl Malone. When he retired from the NBA, he was the number 2 all-time scorer, but because he doesn't have that moniker of a championship on his history, people don't look at Karl Malone as being one of the greatest players of all time. But when he retired from the NBA, only Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had scored more points than the mailman.
Yeah, that's true, and he had his thing going with Stockton and Malone. Remember that back in the day. Also, Allen Iverson has 11. Damian Lillard has 11. Bernard King 8, Dominic Wilkins 7, Kevin Durant still playing, and Steph Curry both have 6. So there's a lot of guys that when you want the ball in somebody's hand to win a game, yeah, 50 points is a lot of points, but there are a lot of guys who just they made their work inside the paint like the great Kareem.
Look at this one thing, Charlton, with those 50-point games.
Yeah.
How many of those 50-point games led to championships?
That's true.
Statistics, as they say, are for losers.
Yeah.
How many of those 50-point games led to championships? That's what you want to look at.
Yep, that's a very good point. Very well said, Big C. And speaking of championships, sometimes coaches get hired because they have a lot of what they call, you have a lot of upside to you. But there are times when you get fired. You know, there's some major markets that are looking for coaches. You would think it'd be small market guys that are looking for coaches, Big C, but some major markets looking for coaches. If you have the NBA, Philadelphia 76ers, the city of brotherly love, how are they going to get somebody to go into Philadelphia and get yelled at even when they win, Big C? And then you have Chicago Bulls looking for some brotherly love from a coach. You have the New York, the Knicks looking for somebody to come in there, and the New Orleans Pelicans. Which of these would you say would be the best job for an NBA coach, Big C? Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you look at all these organizations, whether you're looking at the Pelicans, who have a very young base, and they're putting all the eggs in the basket on Zion Williams, you look at the Chicago Bulls with Zach LaVine, that people are saying is an up-and-coming budding star. You look at the New York Nets, and you got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, which I still don't think that those two are going to work out.
Really?
And you have the Philadelphia 76ers
with
Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. I mean, there's a plethora of opportunity in the NBA. But it comes down to, Charlton, who wants to ditch the ego for their personality?
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. It doesn't make any difference what coach you bring in. It's who can coexist. That's what it comes down to in the basketball arena. When we saw the Golden State Warriors, when Kevin Durant went to that organization, that was a proud organization that already had a championship. They said, hey, we can defer. No big deal. If he's going to help us win a couple more, we accept that. So they put the egos aside to let Kevin go out there and handle it.
Yeah.
We know what we can do. We're confident in our ability. That's the problem that players have nowadays, Charlton, is the self-promotion of these athletes, that I have to be the guy.
Yeah.
Kyrie Irving believes that the world is flat there in New Jersey. Kevin Durant, we don't know if he's going to be the same player coming back off that Achilles.
Yeah.
Big men don't always recover from leg injuries as you do when you get a guard with a leg injury. So that's going to be the question mark with Kevin Durant. Will he still have that explosiveness coming off that Achilles injury?
Yeah.
So, when I look at the overall aspect of those 4 key openings, I still think that Philadelphia is the best scenario of all of those stuff. They just need to get a bona fide shooter is what they need. They need to keep Ben Simmons down on the block, get a bona fide point guard who can shoot the ball.
Yeah, no matter who they get, they still have, right now, the Toronto Raptors in the East, the Miami Heat. I mean, they're looking very solid. Boston's looking good. And, people think about Milwaukee just because they were knocked off last year in the Eastern Conference Finals. But I'm not so sure that Milwaukee's the best team in the East right now, at least in the bubble, maybe outside of the bubble. But since the bubble appeared, Big C, and I do feel that some of their players will deal with some emotions based on what happened with another shooting that happened up in Wisconsin, Big C. But I don't know. Who do you feel so far is your team that you would pull with right now, that you would roll with out of the Eastern Conference? And then I'll ask your thoughts about the West, Big C, your thoughts.
Well, you got to look at the champs, Charlton. They're still the champs. They have not been dethroned. They ran through that first-round matchup they had. They did it with ease, and now they're facing the Celtics. I think the team that comes out of that challenge between the Celtics and the Raptors will represent the East for the NBA title. And Giannis still has his real estate agent looking in the Bay Area for a house.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice. Hey, they got to wait till the smoke clears. He'll look for a house when the smoke clears, if that makes any sense to you. In California. In fact, Sarah Palin says she can see Russia from her house. There are people in Canada say they can see California with the smoke. Because it's all fair in love and war. And speaking of smoke, Major League Baseball great Albert Pujols, he moved past Alex Rodriguez last night for second place all time on the Major League Baseball RBI list. 2,087 RBIs, only trailing the great Hank Aaron, who has Major League Baseball all-time leader with 2,297 RBIs over 23 seasons, and also the most steroid-free home runs, if that makes sense to you, Big C. Your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when you think about a sport that's called America's pastime,
Yeah.
you got two minority men on the top of the all-time RBI list in Major League Baseball history.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the years that minority players were not allowed to play in the major leagues, Charlton, that what these two men have accomplished, Hank Aaron and now Albert Pujols, being 1 and 2 of the RBI kings in the history of Major League Baseball, but they won't get the recognition that they solely deserve. Even though Hank has been gone out of the game for a few decades,
Yep.
and Albert Pujols is still chugging along, they're still not always thought about as the great. Hank only gets the moniker of, the official home run king,
Yep.
but he's never even talked about in the same light as Babe Ruth. They've not talked about Lou Gehrig, Mickey Mantle, and those guys.
Yeah.
But, it's a proud day to say that Major League Baseball records are held by minority Americans. You think about the stolen base with Ricky Henderson,
Yeah.
Charlton,
Yeah.
the home run, whether it's Barry Bonds or Hank Aaron. You think about the RBIs with Hank Aaron, Charlton. Just what Major League Baseball players the Baseball Association has gotten from minority players is astounding.
Especially with all the pushback. They were not welcomed in. They were pushed out. They were brought in like you bring a dog in the house when it's rainy outside, the dog's all muddy. Most people don't want to bring the dog in the house, but they'll love the dog. There are people who show more affection for their dog than they did for African-American athletes trying to integrate sports. And people say, well, why does Black Lives Matter? All lives matter. It hasn't always been treated that way. Final story. I know that everybody has their thoughts about this. It's just, when you talked about Nick Saban, I do believe he's going to donate his whole 2020 paycheck to COVID-19 research, since over 500 people at University of Alabama, have tested positive for COVID-19. Nick doesn't need the $10 million or whatever they're giving. So when he says he really wants to do it for the players, I believe he's going to do what the players do. He's going to work for free this year. But do you think we'll ever get to the point where right now it makes so much sense if they talk about conference realignment? Are we at the time where they're really going to take conference realignment serious? Nebraska wants to leave the Big Ten because they make you read. They just want to go down to the SEC, but they don't read, Big C, your thoughts?
Well, Charlton, when we talk about conference realignment, it's not as easy as you think it is. We're talking about contractual and television obligations that have allowed these schools to intertwine with each other, and it's bigger than just football. Some sports generate more revenue than others in these conferences, and so you're aligning yourself in these conferences to have power play in television. So you just don't walk out of a conference thinking you're going to have that same financial share going to a lesser conference.
Yeah, people think that, but you think about it. We have the pandemic, everything's on pause. West Virginia should be in the same conference with Virginia. I believe Virginia's in the ACC, West Virginia's in the Big 12. They got to fly really far to play. I mean, what if we put Pittsburgh and Penn State in the Big 10? They have like 19 schools anyway, Big C. But everybody knows Iowa, Iowa State, one's in the Big 10, one's in the Big 12, and they're in the same state. But that's just part of conference alignment and realignment. I don't know if it's ever going to happen, but if they're going to talk about it, it'd be a great time. As we close out, I really want to tell people to just vote, and I can't make people vote. You're going to vote for who you feel is going to be best for this country. In my opinion, if you want to bring decency to the White House, that's Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. Donald Trump and Mike Pence have had a horrific presidency. When you look at relations with race relations, also with unemployment, the pandemic is killing people, and they're trying to tell you, oh, it'll just float away. It'll just float away. And he lied. He lied then, and he's lying now. They were so angry at the Republican National Convention. Maybe Gulliver was mad because she had that COVID-19 and it made her angry. I don't know. But I'm going to tell people, make sure you vote. Just text the word vote to 26797. Tell all your friends Big C and the NFL said vote, and it's all fair and love and war. Big C, final thing I want to get from you. I know we talk about sports and politics, and I opened up talking about Herschel Walker and how I feel bad. And you said he hires a lot of people of color. But do you think he'll come out and make some atonements about what happened in Milwaukee since he taped his interview before? Big C, your thoughts?
He's not going to do that, Charlton. You got to look where Herschel Walker resides. He resides in Georgia, still one of the most oppressed states for black people in America. You cannot change someone's political beliefs. It's just like when you say, oh, not all white people are bad, not all black people are bad. Just because Herschel Walker thinks a certain way, do you judge Herschel Walker on that, or do you judge Herschel Walker on who he employs, the minorities that he employs, the lives that he's made better? And you got to understand, his financial start came from Donald Trump in the world when he left the University of Georgia after a junior and he signed with the New Jersey Generals.
Yeah.
Donald Trump was his original boss and gave him the largest contract in the history of pro football at that time. So he got him his start. So, I mean, in that scenario, he's always forever grateful. But to have known someone and interacted with someone for 37 years, there's a benefit to both parties when you do that. So, I mean, we can't judge Black America on Herschel Walker. No more than we can judge Black America on Tim Scott, who spoke last night.
Yeah.
So you have to look at things from that perspective. Nor, as you say, we can't judge all white America on bad white America. That's how you have to look at it.
Yeah, it's all fair in love and war. And to each his own, just make sure you vote. Big C, back in the day, there's a man by the name of Drew Boudini Brown. He was known as Muhammad Ali's right-hand man, and he would always tell Ali, with all you got to use, how can you lose? Rumble, young man, rumble. Big C, what are you looking forward to in the sports universe?
Well, you know, I was amazed today from the NFL, Charlton, after they had received 77 false positive tests from COVID-19 from 11 different teams, that they've done no more follow-up on that. And we've heard nothing about those players that allegedly test positive for COVID-19, whether they were in quarantine or not. So how quiet is the NFL going to be about COVID-19 from here on in? I want to say thanks once again to our frontline healthcare workers, our nurses, our doctors, our first responders. Only as everybody can be as honest, as forward, as empathetic as you are on the political realm. Stay strong. Keep America safe.
Keep America safe. Stay strong every Monday through Friday at 5 and 6 p.m. worldwide, where you follow Big C Sports on the Big C Sports Network, on the #1 network in the United States of America. And Big C Sports has been voted the #1 sports show in the universe, according to Big C and the good old boys down south. As we always tell you, that's never, ever an excuse for racism or domestic violence. If you know any man, woman, or child going through that garbage, please pick up the phone and ask for help, because no man, woman, or child should ever have to go through that garbage on their own. And as we always tell you on every Big C Sports show, we thank you, we appreciate you, and we hope that you have a super fantastic day.